Hi everyone and welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is the owner of a gym in East London called Integra and his name is Michael Goulden. Michael is first and foremost a personal trainer. He has a team of trainers that work for him and they do an outstanding job with every single person that passes through there. Michael is also an educator. He teaches the RTS course here in the UK and that's how I actually came to meet him. He was teaching it while I was on it. He's different to every other PT I know. He has a real mind-blowing perspective on all things exercise, and through the RTS program taught me, everything I know about exercise mechanics. That being said, I've been probably too quick in the past to pigeonhole Michael into the kind of this RTS guy, where actually he's a PT and, exercise mechanics is a very small part of that. And he's actually got so much cool insights into all things personal training, from communication, client behavior, the language you use, therapies, remedies, assessments. There's a whole host and a true holistic approach for what personal training should be, and that's personal to the person in front of you. The mantra of RTS being the client has all the answers, and not creating this God complex that you know everything when the client is the person with all the information you're looking for. Michael is an expert in keeping that and remaining unbiased, even after all these years of experience and expertise, and it's something that I admire and wish to replicate in my career. My goal of this episode was to find out Michael's journey to where he is now, and to touch on some subjects that would allow you to be introduced to the way his mind works, and the level of detail he has, and the amount of questions that he asks, and hopefully introduce you to the education side of him, and want you to go and learn from him. I always leave our conversations probably more frustrated than when they started, which is a great thing, by the way, as I'm just continually opens up an exploration of wanting to know everything about exercise and the way the body works and the nervous system. And once you delve into it, you kind of realize that you're never going to know all of it, but there's just so much to learn, and it's more and more exciting the deeper you go into that. We cover a few things. I certainly feel like once it's over, I think, I should have asked this, I should have said this here. And during every conversation I have with Michael, my brain's working at a million miles an hour, trying to keep up and trying to re-question and question everything I'm thinking and he's saying, and we go back and forth. So it's awesome, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Michael Goulden. Welcome to Michael Goulden, the Mike podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're busy. I know you're a gym owner. I know you're a business owner. I know you've got people that work for you. I know you've got clients coming out of your ears, but you've somehow found time to talk to me. So thank you very much for coming on. How are you?
I'm good. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
My pleasure. And I'm sure the listeners too, when we start to get into some of the nitty gritty subjects I want to get into, relating to, or just picking your brain on just about everything. I was thinking earlier, I don't know that much about you. I've known you through, you taught a course that I was on a few years ago, maybe 6, 7, I don't know how many years ago.
2014.
Was it? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I was introduced to you, and then you became this kind of like, well, this guru to me on exercise mechanics, and I just wanted to pick your brain on that, but I never have actually stepped back and thought, how did you get here? So you've got your own gym in Shoreditch. Is it Shoreditch? Brick Lane, right?
Shoreditch, yeah, Spitalfields.
Yeah, there we go. So where did you start? Can you kind of take me back and just give me the first? Because I think you're about 103, even though you look about 15. I don't know what happened. You always come up with stories that you say like, oh yeah, so back in 99. I think, what is going on here? Where did your fitness journey or career start, and where's that kind of taking you up to now?
So I started training in gyms when I was about 10, and so I was a regular at a couple of different gyms back in Leeds when I was in school. And all the way through school, I used to go with my uncle.
Actual gyms?
Actual gyms. So these were bodybuilding gyms and, natural and non-natural bodybuilding gyms. And then eventually like the fitness centers started to kind of come on board. But when I was in school, and I was probably 15, I was invited to have a part-time job in a gym. And that's effectively where I started. So I started as a gym instructor. I
Okay.
started on the gym floor, and I had absolutely zero qualifications and obviously no insurance and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was allowed to run amok with all of the gym members.
Wait, how old are you at this point?
15.
Oh my God.
And so that was about, that's probably about 72 years ago now.
Yeah.
And so the journey through there has really been, gym instructor for a long period of time, which doesn't really exist now. I mean, there's health coaches in some places, but a gym instructor, there was no such thing as a personal trainer. Went to a more kind of exclusive health club within Leeds, and at some point, I think it was 1998, I decided to move to London. And so I moved to London. I worked for a short period of time in a gym, and then I moved into personal training. And shortly after that, I opened a personal training studio, as you do, just when you think, what could go wrong?
Yeah, I guess it's
And
the natural
that was
progression.
literally the kind of thought process. Like, I've kind of come from nothing. So if this thing doesn't work, then I've been there before. I know what nothing looks like. I'll just close it down. And
Yeah, I get that.
there was a risk-free kind of element to it, which obviously 72 years later doesn't exist like it did then.
Exactly, yeah. So you did some education along the way, I guess, unless you've still got zero qualifications.
I only became qualified as a trainer last year.
Yeah.
And over that time when I was in the gym, then I did a YMCA gym instructor, and then this 18-month personal trainer thing with those guys, which I think they've condensed now down to 6 days or 6 weeks.
I was going to say 18 months. Like I think I did mine in a weekend.
Yeah, it was actually spread out, and there was assessments, and it was pretty full on. And then pretty much every year since then, I've done something. So whether it's it's all been non-academic up until maybe 2008, but it was doing professional, vocational qualifications and certifications.
Just kind of adding to your lifestyle.
With various people. From about 2004, I was doing stuff more globally. So traveling to the US to study, or traveling to different parts of Europe to do courses. But yes, it's not really stopped since then.
Where did that come from? That kind of like, because even going back, so you knew you wanted to be in the fitness industry. Well, like, how do you even know that? But actually, take me back to that. How did you even know that you wanted to be in the fitness industry?
When I was 15.
Yeah, like what happened? I did. It just fell
I
into
did.
it.
I wanted to be a graphic designer.
Right.
So I'm a failed graphic designer. I was studying that.
Yeah.
And actually, not that I'm a failed graphic designer. I was studying that, and I was really interested in that, and I was really interested in the gym. And having done some work experience in that world, I realized that I was really enjoying helping people. And I was really enjoying being able to see this, and this was, looking back now, I realize this is one of my first core values, progression. I was seeing this progression within people, and I was able to be a part of that. I wasn't responsible for that. They were responsible for that, but being a part of that was really, it actually gave me a lot of energy. It made me want to go into work in the morning.
Yeah.
And so it was like that, getting to 17, getting to 18, where this thing was like, no, this is definitely, I'm loving this every single day, and loving the complexity and the variety that's on offer.
And that's what's also in parallel with your own education. You're constantly progressing and being added to it, and still are now. And just so that you've kind of got that constant love of moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because everybody has that thing where they say, why did you get into personal training? They say, I want to help people. And then you look at some of the things they do in the gym and you think, when did that stop happening? Because you're really doing some rubbish stuff right now. Which again, we'll get into.
There's some really cool stuff though, if you think about that, working with an individual, that, I can put together a program, and you used to do that as a gym instructor. You put together the program and you give it to everyone. And for some reason, I've got no idea why, but for some reason, you would see this person would just excel and they just get this result. And this person over here, they just fall flat. And in my screwy brain, I was always kind of trying to figure out what was it, if that program was so good, because I got it out of men's fitness or men's health, and they said it was the best. If it was the best, why was it not for these people?
Right.
And for me, I don't know if it was a chip on my shoulder or something that was kind of always kind of nagging. I just wanted to figure out why. And so it's understanding the why that's kept me going with all of the education.
I think it's something that makes you so different, and will, you know, the more people get to know you, the more it become apparent. And most people there would have just concentrated on the good ones and just the successes, and people just want to go after the successes. But you totally look at things the other way and look at the failures and learn more from those, rather than just thinking, well, I found a way, look, it's working for 60%, 70%, that seems all right. But you're like, well, what about the other 30? And then delve into that. And that's so clear with the way that you work with clients and the way that you've kind of built up your toolkit now.
And there's a negative side to that. There's a period where if people weren't getting fat loss results, I'd be blaming them rather than the program that I implemented. Like, I did those silly mistakes all the way. I'm still making mistakes now, but it's how do you measure that, and how are you conscious of those mistakes? Was it really, you know, if the client didn't achieve their goal, is it really about them? And yeah, it might be. But how do we know that to be true? How do we figure that out? Or how do we figure out, no, it's actually the program. The program failed that person because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
All of those variables.
Yeah, I think that's it's interesting. I was thinking about that the other day. I've kind of written a bit of a post on it about, like, well, exactly about that, kind of looking at the failures and yeah. Anyway, the rabbit hole that I don't want to go down, but yeah, super interesting. So
I love the rabbit holes.
No, yeah, we'll just go off, and maybe 3 hours later, I've not even got to like 2002 or whatever. So, and you skipped a bunch. So, learned there, went into gym, moved to London for any reason. What happened?
I wanted just to either run away from Leeds or run towards something in London, or I just wanted something different. I wanted something bigger.
Okay. So, where did you work when you came down here?
I worked at a YMCA.
Okay.
So there was a YMCA in Ealing that no longer exists. And I worked there for a period of time and worked my way up to gym manager within that place before branching out and going into personal training. So which again was exciting for me, that I got an opportunity to really kind of mess up managing other people. And trying to understand kind of, you know, you've gone from you're helping a client reach their potential. Now, how do you help a team reach its potential when maybe they don't want to, and maybe you can't quite understand them, and the inner workings of that, which for people that kind of go on into management, it's like, good on you. There's a big challenge there.
Yeah, well, that's a huge, the natural progression of any job really is you're good at sales. You're the best salesman in your team, and you're so good that we're going to make you manager of the team. You think, well, hold on, I was good at selling. I'm not good at managing. And that happens in personal training all the time. You're a good PT, and you're so good that you're now going to manage other PTs, and you think, what? It's not really the same thing. But you're now going to learn how to kit a gym out and all that stuff. So it's but you clearly took something from it because you progressed. So you didn't PT at the YMCA?
No, I don't know.
So where did you go and do PT stuff?
Once I left there, then I went into, I think I rented space out of a couple of different tiny studios before, and I did that for, I don't know, maybe 6 months before getting an opportunity to open my first place.
And you, what was your thing? Like, did you have like what were you training people for? What was somebody come to you to train for? Did you have a thing?
At that point, no. It was really fitness and fat loss and moving better. And I think that might have been the point where I was exploring functional training and, you know, kind of looking at movement quality and things like that. So that, you know, there was a whole world that existed around that time that I was kind of looking at and exploring and bringing that into clients and testing it on clients and seeing what happened.
So did you then go into more, because at some point you must have, like, so I know you through teaching me about exercise mechanics first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
When did that transition start to happen, or when did that kind of world get open to you? Because it's definitely not on any level 3 PT qualification. I mean, I was really racking my brains earlier, and I felt so stupid. I literally couldn't remember what they teach you about exercise. All I can remember is doing. They watch you put someone through a session, which I would just die to watch my session, and you kind of do things, and then they say that was good. I just don't know what I don't know what the rules are. So once that kind of world's been opened up to you, you think, how would this not mandatory to do for every personal trainer? But where did that love and like world kind of first start with you?
I think 2004, I did a course in Sweden. I did a course in Sweden with this guy called Dr. Mark Slavin, and he taught for the resistance training specialist program. And the reason why I went there is because leading up, if you think 2000 to 2004, I was following the rules, and I was following the rules of exercise, and I was following the gurus, and I was following, some of the people that you will know, and looking at their programs and investing heavily in them, bringing them back into the studio and trying them out and implementing them. And with lots of these teachers, I would be paying for their time privately and going, hey, I've got a case study. I'd love to explore this with you. And I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've explored this, I've explored this. What am I missing? Like, that's my line. What am I missing? And it would reach a point where they would get to the point and go, either I don't know, which I'd be like, respect, or they'd go, you didn't try hard enough, or they just don't want it, or some other bullshit. And so I kind of just wanted to go, okay, so if you think about the things that we need to learn as a trainer, we need to understand exercise, we need to understand communication, behavior change. I just tried to find the people who I thought were the leaders in those fields. And that's where I came across Tom Purvis and RTS. And I was just like, I bought some books that were out of date from him, from their website. And I was just going through this, and I was just like, oh shit, there is no such thing as a bench press. There's Lucas's bench press, and there's Michael's bench press. And that was just like, whoa, you've just flipped it. And so as soon as they were in Europe, I booked on a course, and I was in Sweden and doing this course with them. And so that everything that I've studied has always come off the back of a question, or a series of questions that I can't answer. And so the stuff that I'm doing today is I have a weekly call with someone, and it's like, I'm exploring this. I've been looking at this. What am I missing? And because they're coming from their perspective, they can go, have you seen this? Have you looked at it in this direction? And so that's why I'm still passionate about studying.
Well, that's the great thing about studying a science and human biology and psychology, and it's so vast and so different that you kind of, the moment you feel like you've cracked it is the moment you have seriously lost. And the realization that you're never going to crack it, and that's a good thing, is amazing, because that kind of just opens up this whole realm of like possibility of like you can explore so many different things, and it is kind of endless at this point. All right, fast forward 1,000 years, we may have cracked something, but currently it's like it's so deep, especially for a qualification you get in a weekend, where you go, right, well, and now I'm getting short of £100, and I'm a PT the same as everyone else is a PT. So
and courses, the ones that and I've checked in with people who are currently taking some of the courses, they are told this is the lat pull down, and here's the choreography. So your feet need to be like this, your hands need to be like this, they need to be at the specific part on the bar. You must reach up to this point, and you must pull down to this point. So it's basically, we might as well just go onto TikTok and follow someone's dance that they've made up, because it is as arbitrary and haphazard as that. It's got nothing to do with the individual in front of us.
But maybe a bit more dangerous than a dance.
But that's okay, because imagine if, you were given the keys to, I don't know, some nuclear submarine, and you had to figure all of that stuff out. And it's really important for the health of the nation that you figure all this out. You've got to be given, the smallest thing right now. It's just imperative for us as professionals, because we're exercise professionals, that that's not the end. And if we think that's the end, then that's why we're seeing people leave the industry in, is it 8 months, 9 months?
Yeah.
So what's the next step? What's the next step? How do we understand the human body, so architecture? How do we understand the forces that we're applying to it? How do we understand we're applying forces to a human being who's got a mind and life experiences and expectations and belief systems that will actually dictate the outcome from the exercises that you give them? Like that's where, as professionals, we're I'm kind of, that's where my compass is set. I'm nowhere near the understanding of all of that stuff. But
well, in your Instagram bio, it says consciously incompetent, which is obviously hilarious, but super true. And I love that you have that there, because no matter what you say, you know a lot more than 99.9% of personal trainers out there. And I think that's a huge downfall that PTs have, is you feel like as the professional you should know it all, and because you should know it all, you kind of end up just making things up and lying to yourself, lying to your clients, and just saying like, yeah, I know that, of course I know that. And if a client asks you a question, or anybody asks you a question to do with health and fitness, especially if you have any kind of like success, like, you've got your own gym, you must know everything. People are super scared to say, I have no idea. And that's just at like a conversational level. But going to like clients, if a client comes to you and says, if I asked you now, right, what's my program? You're going to say, I have no idea. And that's like, once you reach that, that's kind of the God status, if that makes sense. That's as far as you're ever going to get. You're not going to get to the, I can read everybody's body and mind, and I know everything. But you've kind of reached that stage where not knowing is the furthest it does go. And that's awesome.
Not knowing, but knowing how to find the answers that I need to be able to give you an answer.
Yeah.
And that's what's really challenging is that if I come to you, let's say you're an accountant, I come to you, you've got no idea about my finances, but I want to feel that I can trust you. I want to feel that you know what you're doing. So I need to feel that you're giving me some certainty. If I come to you as a trainer, I need some certainty that I know that if I invest this money in you, because I'm investing in you, that you can deliver something for me. And so there's a big part of, as exercise professionals, as personal trainers, we need to foster trust. And that comes in the communication. And it is really authentic of me to go, I got no idea, dude. You've just turned up on my door. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out what's going on with your body, with your joints, with your muscles. I need to find out more about your goals, because you've told me nothing about your goals. I need to figure out how are you performing today. I need to know about your tolerance level. So I need to know something about your sleep, about your nutrition. I need to know something about your injury status. And at that point, then I'm going to be super specific, and I'm going to be really precise with you. And I'm going to make sure that we measure, because this has got to be really tangible. Because the thing that's really important for me is I've got to have some tangible measurements, and I want to witness progression.
Yeah.
Nothing in here is going to be kind of, we're never putting the magic cream and kissing it better and just sending you on your way for 2 weeks. It's like, this is real stuff.
Yeah. And clients want to see that too. And as you spoke about before, of your, what kind of hooked you into it is feeling like you're progressing. And if there's one thing that gets client buy-in, it is that it's knowing that this is actually working. And on what level and what that means and blah, blah, blah is a whole different conversation. But knowing that something is getting better, going from one place to another progressively is super important.
And I think in 2002 to 2004, we were seeing we were seeing people have these niggles in our gym, and we would send them to physiotherapists, and they go to the physiotherapist and they'd come back and they'd have the same problems. And I'd be like, that's curious. I wonder why. We'd send them to someone else, they'd come back. We'd send them to someone else, they'd come back, and they'd have the same problems. So I decided to go on a little kind of journey with my education of looking at manual therapies. How could I integrate, and Integra stands for, one of the words is integration. How could I integrate manual therapies into a fitness realm? How could I integrate these into a performance realm? And so I did, a bunch of stuff, sports massage, neuromuscular therapy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that I found was that you would come in and you'd have a tight neck, and I would do something which would get rid of that tight neck. So you would think I had magic fingers. You'd think it would be amazing, but you'd come back the next week with the same issue. And I'd be like, that doesn't work for me, because I'm just working on symptoms.
Right.
I'm just effectively, I'm the equivalent of ibuprofen or a bottle of tequila. Like, it's not really getting to the root, because if you're getting the same issue, then I'm not being effective. And that for me is just like, that it just doesn't work for me as a professional.
Yeah, it's cause and effect, and you're taking the effect rather than the cause.
Yeah. And so that's another reason why when I went and did that course out in Sweden, and then I started going over to the US, and I think, ever since then, I think I've been out there somewhere between 5 and 10 times a year, just absorbing, just learning.
So this was you went up to Oklahoma to meet Tom and go through, what year was that?
That one was probably 2000 and, I can't remember, 8, somewhere around then.
Right, a bunch ago. It's funny, I feel like almost embarrassed about when I see Tom's videos and he's posting about, I was talking about this in 87, that this was like a thing, because he's so bad and you're bad at it too, of like, and like with deep reason to it, of like getting to that, but like self-promotion and advertising RTS and advertising that exercise mechanics, because and I get the whole, if you want it you'll find it, and then you kind of weed out a lot of rubbish, but I always feel super embarrassed when I realize how long it's been around, because when I did your course in 2014, it made me feel the best and the most stupid person I've ever kind of been, because it was like, oh my God, all my programming, and I'd been working at top UK personal training facilities at this point, charging hundreds of pounds for personal training by the hour, right? Thousands by the week, whatever. And my programming, like, listen, I was never an idiot, don't get me wrong, but my programming was a bit a bit kind of like, well, that probably does that. What do you want to do? Chest? Well, you've got upper, lower, mid, inside, outside, back to front, whatever you want. If you want to do back, you've got these exercises, and that was kind of it. And I just kind of learned that from going to bodybuilding gyms when I was 18, when I first started training, and the biggest dude in there I remember we'd go in, this guy he had like a bit of pencil and paper, and we'd go in and say, right, what's the workout today? And he'd just go, here you go. And you'd be like, well, he's massive. He's like still to this day one of the biggest guys I've ever seen. So obviously that's the program to do. And then I kind of really took that into personal training when I started PTing 5 or 6 years later, and then I kind of didn't really review it, and then I did RTS, and after, I can't remember how long it took. It was a while, right? I remember me and my friend Sean sat down and we were like, what have we been doing? How have we been able to train people? So like the world that it opens up once you start looking at this exercise mechanic stuff, which was encased in this RTS course, which obviously I keep going on about to everybody. You now teach that. Do you still teach it over here? And you have done for a while. How did that happen?
Tom invited me to go over and present and teach, and I did some stuff in Toronto and the US, and then brought it here. The process for RTS Mastery, which is the top level that he currently teaches, it's now called RTS 3, but Mastery at the time was, you had to be able to present that information, right, as though it was your own, as though you owned it. And that's the as professionals, rather than going, Tom says this, or Michael says this, I'm going to follow this. It's about you owning that information. And so I was just really lucky and fortunate, and for some reason, Tom saw something in me as I was going over there and presenting. And I've been really passionate about this information forever. And so passing that for me was it didn't require a lot of extra effort over what I was already doing. Because I'd go and I'd absorb all this information. I'd be applying it to 40, 50 sessions a week. And then I'd be going back out there, having done 200 sessions that month and gone back out there. And I'd just be kind of just, this would make sense to me, put words to things that I've experienced in the gym myself.
Right.
Why does this feel a challenge when I get to this point and it doesn't here? Yeah. Why does my elbow feel like shit when I do this barbell bicep curl?
Yeah.
Why does my client always experience this? Like, it's always based upon questions. But the thing I wanted to kind of like, back on that course, 2014, that was probably, I would probably look at that and review that course and that I delivered and go, yeah, that was pretty shit. Because that's kind of what I do anyway. So I think that for the last one I did as well.
Yeah.
So the thing that I want you to know is that all of that stuff that you've done before, it worked. It did its job. So it delivered results. And you have been profound in the results that you've been delivering. So you, all the way back to when you were in Nottingham, you were delivering results, and probably before then that I'm not aware of. So it works. But we just got to know what that means. It works. And, could we be more efficient? Could we change exercises so that it sets someone up for the long term in terms of joint health? Could we, instead of doing 3 different types of bicep curls, could we actually just do these 2? Or maybe we're throwing the 3rd in because it's fun, and we need to remember that because we're training people.
Yeah.
It's just really being conscious of those, of the exercises that we're choosing. So the exercise design, the exercise execution. What are we trying to do? If we're asking someone to accelerate through this, why? Yeah. What's the actual impact? And and we could keep on kind of going on with the variables there. So it's not. I never see anything that I teach, because I teach anatomy, exercise mechanics, we're teaching coaching and communication. I never see it as, let's rip apart what you're doing, because I'm not ever going to rip apart what I did when I was doing functional training, standing on a wobble board with one eye closed and kind of like, doing this.
Yeah.
That led me to who I am today. It's really, that worked for someone.
Yeah, but it's that constant refining and trying to make better. But the reason that we had actually come to the course was only because Ben Pekulski, again, huge dude, said, "Oh, if you want to maximize hypertrophy results, you should go and do this course." So we were rocking up like, bandanas on and 80s bodybuilding sweats on, ready to like inject steroids and get huge. Yeah, like eating chicken 6 times a day. And then when you sat us down, you were like, "What's these joint forces happening?" And I was thinking, "What's going on here?" The first day we were left, and we thought, where were the bulging biceps? What happened? Like, this is about education. We wanted to do like the best drop set or something. So it was the reason we were there was because it was kind of just following down that like, well, this is going to be the best workout you've ever done. And it was like it just kind of, one of the lunch times we kind of sat around, and it was just one of those things that had never really considered that if you are going to ask people to exercise, you had better understand exactly what's going on. And it was one of those weird things that you just think, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Like, it's like a real panicky, which is great. It was like the best feeling ever. And it's one of those things that like 6 years later, you're still kind of buzzing off a little bit of that energy of like, I'm so excited that I don't know anything, because you just got so much to learn and so much responsibility, that like people's health is their like number one asset, and they trust you with it. So you better bloody study what's going on. And when even the smallest of things of talking about joint forces, and then once I'd kind of, been through that few weeks, I always thought that training came with a few battle scars. I thought it was just part of the gig, right? You know, you'd always go into the gym and someone would have a bit of a, oh, I can't do that today, my elbow's killing me, so I just won't do it for this week, but next week I'm back on this whatever exercise they're going to do. And so I thought that was kind of it. You know, shoulder's going to hurt one week, your knee's going to probably hurt one week, and your back's going to constantly hurt, especially mine. And it was only since I kind of implemented the learning about inertia and those kinds of, you know, joint forces and considering the angles, and that I haven't really hurt since, which is kind of weird. And I've hurt in the right places, but like joints, and just feels amazing. And once you have that, you think, well, this needs to be the way for everybody. And then you have to work out how to apply it to everybody. And that is a whole jungle in itself. So yeah, that there was a real like tangible
benefit, right? You've got you've got the benefit of exercise, and you've got a cost of exercise. And depending upon the person, depending upon their experience, depending upon what experience they want in the gym, we get to go, well, we can ramp up the benefits and minimize this cost. Or let's throw that out of the way. We get to go, we've got these 10 variables. Which one do we want to enhance? We want this person to feel, and one of the interesting things, actually, you get trainers into a room, we create a sensation on that leg extension or one of the leg extensions at one of the gyms where it feels like their quad is going to explode. And when they get to that point, now we're getting into actually their internal dialogue. And that's where we're getting into the coaching. It's like, why are you giving up now? You've got another 6, 7, 8, 22 reps in there. And I want to show you that you've got them in there safely, because I know that we've aligned this knee joint or the path of motion of this tibia up to that machine. This is safe.
Yeah.
This is safe. You can trust this.
Yeah.
And let's keep on going. Let's see where the end is for this muscle in terms of momentary muscular failure. Now, doing that on the leg extension, everyone loves that. Doing that on bicep curls, where you're getting people to play around with intention or touch or kind of different methods of restraint, everyone loves that. You get onto that 45-degree spinal extension, everyone hates it. So that hit that comes from that exercise is based upon fear of, oh, that must be back pain. We don't think that with the biceps or the quads. That must be back pain. And that means that I'm not going to be able to work. That means I'm not going to be able to earn money. Like, it goes rapidly into that.
I'm the worst, yeah.
So how do we create the right exercise experience where they don't fear, they trust you as your trainer, as the personal trainer that's guiding them through this? How do you create a sensation profile that matches their risk profile and still get them results?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think there's just on that the one of the biggest buy-ins that I get with clients now is so you know, obviously get a range of clients. If somebody's been training, I'm always so excited to do some exercise with them. If they've like, you know, trained for 10 years, I used to lift back in the day, I'm like, I'm so excited about what's going to happen here. So we get on like a seated chest press or something, and I just set them up nicely, and then, you know, go for a super slow set, and I'm touching them, whatever. And they will always say, oh my God, I've never felt my pecs like that. And then they are like, teach me. Like that is it. And that is all from RTS, like, and from a few other things that you load in of that exercise experience. And then people think that the experience of a session needs to be puking in the toilet. And it might be, and that might happen. It's definitely not the goal of the workout. But the experience of being able to feel the right muscles and feel like they understand it rather than just doing what you say. I'm more like, can you feel that there? Like that kind of communication and relationship building with the client is something that's come of it. It's like so hugely is they feel like you're on a team more than just you telling them what to do. Does that make sense?
That's it. And also with that experience where you think about their internal dialogue, and I'm not going to say you're controlling it, but you're guiding their internal dialogue. You're suggesting where they should focus. Actually, as these effects, and this is where exercise transcends into the rest of people's life, because by improving their ability to focus, they get to take that skill with them to work and to home, improving the ability for concentration, spatial awareness, attention. Like all of those are skills which we learn. They're parts of the brain that light up when we get that during exercise. And if you do that while you're exercising and you're getting this release of hormones such as BDNF, which the guys listening and watching can go look at what BDNF and exercise does. That means you get neurogenesis and you get new neural connections, and it's super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. So you know, there are some clients that come in here, and we have clients for years. We don't really offer that 6-week program. We get clients for 6 years.
Yeah.
And we get to go, like, how do you want to deal with this situation? So when you've got the trainer that's on the leg extension and they're stopping at 12 reps, and we're like, you can do 22, you can do 24. You're teaching them that as the shit gets tough, they can stay there. They don't need to throw it. They don't need to give up. And that skill, they then take over into, you know, other parts of their life, which is awesome.
You got to stay calm in the chaos. So I'm saying, like, your muscles are screaming, but like, stay with me, keep a level head, like stay in that moment. And it's so true. It sounds so, I guess if somebody wasn't into the gym, you'd think, what are these guys talking about? But it is, I mean, scientifically true, but it's so crazy. I tweeted something today about that, something about practicing not giving up when things get tough. And that's it's a real thing that people don't really think about, but they do every single day. So then, you know, other life situations come up, like, come on, I've been here before. Things have got tough and I didn't give up, you know, that kind of thing. And I am fascinated with like psychology of exercise and dieting and all that stuff. And I think I've painted myself in the last few years as this like transformation guy. But if you actually knew anything about the way I train people, and you can ask every client, we will diet for that transformation. That's fine. That's a different conversation. For exercise, I want to set people up for the next 50 years. And the way that I do that is trying to implement as best I can all my like very tiny brain cells into these micro progressions and trying to get every joint as strong as possible, and then maybe let them work together. I don't really know what I'm doing, you know, that kind of thing. And so like, the exercise part of it, which has totally come from the way you work. Can you tell me about your client? So if a new client comes in, what's your process? What happens? And they come to you because they want to feel a bit better, and that's as vague as it is.
We've never had someone that vague. we tend to get one of three. We get actually, looking at our client base, 75% are in creative industries and 25% are in legal or finance or other. There's a commonality with everyone where they're all either at the top of their game or they're striving for it. And so they understand the impact that their body and their mind has on their ability to do that. So if they're a director, a film director, they understand. If they're, you know, if they're CEO of a business, they understand the impact that this has. So that individual's coming for energy. That's the number one request. Health, or not ill health. Fitness, improved sleep, etc., etc. So that's the kind of the health and fitness. Then we get the people who come to us that are performing a sport and they want to improve their performance. So they're really looking at, because we can go into detail and we measure a lot of things, you know, those
two things, do you have, because I know you have like a, which I want you to tell me about, the like client assessment. Would the goal define the assessment, or is it kind of like, well, let's see where you're at and then?
To a certain extent, there's a general starting off point, but where we dive off into it is dependent upon the individual. And so it's not that the performance will have a different assessment to the fitness. It's more the individual. This is what I'm seeing. We're going to dive off into that. But generally, when a client comes in, after we've got past the consultation, the free consultation, all of that stuff, then it's about going, let's see what's going on with your body. So from your big toe ankle all the way up to your neck, let's see how your body moves individually. Let's look at each joint.
And then do that, you get them to jump off a box and you write down what's going on.
That's it. So we've got some wobble boards over there and some blindfolds that we get people to do, and some headphones.
That was literally how I was taught to do assessments. I want to say a clap test, something like that, where you jump off a land, and if the knee goes in, then the VMO, blah, blah. how do you assess, because it's so detailed?
If the knee goes in on that test, it means you're really functioning really well.
Yeah,
It's
he's
designed
balanced.
to go in.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go in, something's fucked up.
Yeah, I know. Well, probably got one leg. Tell me how you do assessments.
It's really based upon, and this is where the answer becomes a little vague, but there is a process. So that process of going through each joint, really figuring out what's the basis of movement. So for you to perform a squat, your ankle needs to do something, your knee needs to do something, and your hip needs to do something. So I need to know, do they have the architectural structural capabilities to even get into that range? And within that, do your muscles function? And within that, do you have a range of control? It doesn't matter that I can get you out here and doing a squat and you're doing this thing where your ass is touching the grass, however long that grass is. I need to know, is that appropriate for that hip joint or for that knee joint, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really, we go into the room on the table and we start to work through and we literally map it out on the board. And we map it on the board so that the client can see in this part of the journey. And then from there, based upon what their goals are, and we do quite an extensive over a period of sessions where we're just kind of really understanding what their goals are, what their expectations. When they say, I want to lose body fat, I want to figure out why. And actually, is that the goal that they want, or is it something else? Or is it something else? Is this the thing that they think that they should say? Like, I really want to know why you're here.
Yeah.
Because all the way from the beginning, I'm always kind of going, you're asking for this and this is easy. Your potential is here. And I know you can't see that now, and I'm not saying this to them. I know you can't see that now, but I want to help you reach this point. I want to know if this is something that really excites you or it really scares you. And so that's the kind of, with the goal setting. So based upon that structural assessment, the mobility assessment, and the goal setting, then we might dive off into different assessments. But it really, the assessment now turns into every single set, every single exercise, every single repetition.
Yeah, so constantly getting like live feedback from, you're always assessing. I get that. With the but back to your manual lie on the table, wiggle your big toe stuff, and then just so people understand, and you've done it for me, but it was so many years ago, it's probably changed. You would write up on the whiteboard, and then you'd mark like left and right, and if they were kind of the same or not the same. What is that?
It's just a jumping off point. So if your arm can come to this point and this one gets to about this point, that gives me an indication that perhaps there's something maybe going on there.
Right. And then you'll explore why that is.
Yeah, because if we just went out and went, okay, I want you to do barbell shoulder press, you'd be going to this point, and then you'd be like, no, you need to push harder.
Yeah.
No, let me offload. Let me attach bands. Let me do something really complex. And it's like, dude, it's just because he actually has no upward rotation. We just need to maybe do some low-level isometrics or do some other manual therapy, perhaps, or refer out if it's something beyond our scope of practice to improve that joint's ability to do what it's capable of doing.
Yeah. You do, I don't know what you call it, so you can give me the name. It used to be about 300 years ago, I think it was MAT stuff. But I know it's not, that's kind of too pigeon-holed to the way you look at it. What is that kind of manual therapy stuff you do? Because I've sent a bunch of clients to you before, and they just think you've got black magic because you prod them somewhere and suddenly they can move and they don't have pain and it's amazing. And I don't know why they come back to me, to be honest.
It's pure trickery. It's pure trickery to get them enrolled on and trusting me and thinking that this is magic, just like you did with the bench press.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. That's all it is. So it's if we're doing something that's local to muscles, where we're trying to improve their force output because we measure it with a dynamometer, we might do isometrics, or we might create a sensation to get them focused on the area. But we're looking at a phenomenon. So in neuroscience, it's called post-activation potentiation, where we're literally looking to increase the potential for this tissue to produce force. But that would probably take 10 seconds of if someone's here for a 5-year period, we're literally spending minutes there because most of our work is actually done out here. Most of our work is how do we apply forces to that tissue to elicit the desired outcome. We've actually got 3 phases of what we do with every client, no matter if it's a rehab or a performance or a fitness client, where the first phase is really looking at the preparation of the body, so joints and muscles. So does that knee move as it could do? And we need to figure out, is it a structural limit or is it, a bunch of other limits? Can we improve its ability? Can we improve the nervous system's ability to control that joint? And once we've done that through the body, then we're out here, we're loading the tissue. And this is actually where the black magic is. This is absolutely, if we just did manual therapies, like I told you before, we'd see a change, but then it'd return back. We'd see a change and it returned back. That just gives us, it's kind of like a window of opportunity for us to train it.
Yeah, interesting. I guess, because now I want to ask why it would go back. Now I'm hooked into just asking you questions. So do we need to go through that? Yeah, why would it go back?
So if you're going to stretch your hamstrings, number one, what you're stretching. So you're stretching some tissues, you're stretching something. If that actually changed its length and allowed your hip to go further, why would that happen? We're guessing right now because I don't have anyone in front of me and we're just kind of like shooting the shit. So I'm going to kind of put forward a potential idea that may be wrong for someone who's listening. If we decrease neural drive into the hamstrings, meaning that your hamstrings, your nervous system wasn't able to create enough tension, we decrease the neural drive and now they're able to lengthen a little bit, as in the actin and myosin within the muscle was able to unslide. So now your hip's able to go further into flexion because it was the hamstring tension that was causing it. So that intervention created a certain outcome. We're there. We're at that point. Why was that tension required? Why did that nervous system ask for that tension to be there? And it might be that that tension was there to protect the hip joint or the knee joint. If that was the case, once the nervous system was able to re-regulate, it would increase the tension again. That's why something would go back, because all we're doing is we're actually just looking at a symptom. We're looking at something that is temporary. And this is a case for manual therapies and everything into exercise. Like if we're going to choose an intervention, and obviously everyone who's a trainer that's listening will document everything that they do, which is good because there's legal requirements for all of that stuff. But if you were to go, this was the intervention, this was the outcome, this is how I measured it, this is how I remeasured and saw it go back to where it should be. That gives you a clue that we need to investigate a little bit further.
Yeah, because if it keeps going back, because of that whole thing, if you said it may have been a protection mechanism, maybe that of something to do with the hip or the knee, and you've potentially undone the seatbelt, if you like, and then you've got this window of opportunity to then retrain something. I don't know how do you then know what direction to take with that and know how safe you are?
That's if you decrease the neural drive to a muscle, which means it can go further, and you're protecting the hip joint, so you've removed the protective mechanism for the hip. Okay, so now we're in a gray area where you're taking responsibility, the trainer, for this individual's hip, and the nervous system has infinitely got more information about why it was doing that than you do. What I'm trying to do now, and I hope that it's coming across, I'm trying to paint a picture that maybe that's not a good idea.
But you so you got the other side of it there, was as to if you were doing increasing the muscles contractile ability through manual therapy stuff.
So I was giving something to the nervous system, and the nervous system decided, nah, this is it. This is as much force as I'm giving this tissue. That you might kind of go, what's the list of potential reasons that might be? That might be damaging that tissue. Your nervous system doesn't want it to contract. But let's say you did a low-level isometric, and there was an increase in force, meaning we did some hip abduction, and we could get onto this machine, and you were stronger. And the nervous system said, yep, I'm going to give that to you. then we're working with the nervous system. Yeah. And we're working with the nervous system to be able to do more.
So being stronger is the good thing. I know I say that like that, and that should be an obvious thing to say, but I'm saying it then puts my mind in the place of, well, every strength and weakness is this unconscious, conscious choice of your nervous system. So if something is perceived as tight or strong or whatever it is, that should also be respected. Does that make sense?
It should all be respected.
Yeah.
It should all be respected. So the question is, are you adding something or removing something?
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about strength or the horsepower of the muscle or the contractile ability of that muscle, you've got a status with that. If we did a little isometric and it increased it, well, there's actually a reason for that. And that is and that's what happens. Everyone's experience when they're doing a set, they get to the bench press and they've got 100 on it and they're doing it and it feels tough. And then they rest for 12 seconds or whatever it is, and they do it again and it's easy on the second set. What you've experienced there is post-activation potentiation.
Yeah, right.
It's a phenomenon that occurs. So backtrack this a little bit. Instead of going in at 100, what we might want to choose to do is go, okay, so you've got your second set, you've got your first set. Prior to that, we're going to do a set of 50. And prior to that, I'm going to do a low-level isometric for rear delt, long head tricep to pre-activate, excite the muscles. And I'm really trying to avoid using the word activate because it's thrown around like it's the second coming. So pre-excite the nervous system and then go do the exercise. Yeah. So for us, what that means is that, we have clients that come and see us just twice a week or 3 times a week, and they're running a business and we don't want to waste their time. We want to be really efficient. We want to kind of go, what's the desired outcome? What's the minimum effective dose that this person needs? How do we prepare the body and the tissue? So that first phase, when I'm on the table measuring everything, it's giving me an idea that in the future training sessions, I know for you, your right shoulder and your left knee, we need to spend a little bit more time preparing that before we exercise. Right.
And that will go into, and it's a super minefield, and I don't even know if we're going to be able to get much out of it, into kind of compound versus single joint stuff. There's a huge bias that obviously compound's better, obviously, and single joint, or would they call it isometric, would they? Is that what it's called? When you're sort of just using one muscle, but actually there's a lot working. I don't know. The opposite of compound. The compounds.
You're talking about isolated.
What did I say? Something I'm so stupid. The whole isolated that's not isolated. And I'm just saying this because you touched on the time efficiency. Would then make somebody think, well, then you're clearly just doing the big bang for your buck exercises, because they've only got 3 sessions a week, so you're probably going to squat one day, deadlift one day, and bench press the other day because that's what you do. But that's not necessarily true for everybody. Could you touch on that?
Where else in life do we really go for these 2 big categories of exercise? You can only choose one. It doesn't make sense. If you speak to a financial advisor, we have a client and he goes, you should diversify. He doesn't say you should put everything into this one thing. It just, he would think that you're idiotic if you did that. So for some reason, we've got this idea that it's an either or. Well, I don't know why we can't use both. Right. And if you really, really, really kind of got to the nitty gritty, and our sessions here are 50 minutes long. Let's lob off 5 minutes because we're preparing. Let's say training time is 45 minutes. In your 45 minutes, is it really that challenging to put single joint stuff in? Is it really that challenging to put one set of leg extension? If you really wanted it to be a strength and conditioning squat, deadlift, bench press, I don't think it's that challenging. And if people find that challenging, then we need to kind of think, how are you managing the time in the gym? How are you managing your programming? Do we really need to be doing 22 sets of squats to elicit the desired outcome.
But what about the people that say that it's without kind of even considering any of the components that make up a squat? Let's go with a squat. It's just a better exercise than doing a leg extension because it works more muscles.
How would that be measured?
So just looking at someone's face doing it, probably. How would it be measured?
Meaning there's an idea there that we're using a bunch of muscles at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to compare one set of squats compared to leg extension, leg curl, for example,
mm-hmm.
that there's a time component there. It takes less time to do one set of squats versus 2 sets.
Mm-hmm. If
we're really time poor and you really have a minute to train per week, but I got to go back to how are we measuring that? And if you think about the quadriceps, once you reach a certain point in that squat, your quadriceps, because the challenge on the quadriceps is decreasing, your quadriceps are not being challenged in that final 40, 30, 20 degrees of extension. Once you get to full extension, not challenged. If you think about the hamstrings, well, the hamstrings don't actually change length. So they're not being challenged in their fully lengthened or their fully shortened position. Is that a problem? How would we know the answer to that? We've got to go back to who we're talking about and what's their goal.
There we go.
So my client that's coming in and they want to be able to look good, they want to build muscle, and they want to be able to run around with their kids, and they want to go on holiday, and they don't want to be in pain. Which exercise do we choose? We don't need to choose. We get to use both.
Yeah.
Because it might be idiotic.
Yeah.
To go, I'm just a compound guy, or I'm just a single joint guy. It really is one of those conversations where we kind of go, I don't know, Lucas, me and you can step out of that conversation because it's like, really? I believe that because I never did. I'm just going to keep doing pull downs because it kind of trains my bicep, except it doesn't. Because the moment arm to my elbow is actually virtually zero at all points in the range, which means that my lats get the challenge, but my biceps don't. And in the bench press, the way that I perform it, the moment arm to the elbow is less. So my triceps, so now my arms aren't developed compared to my chest and back. Meaning we get to overlap this stuff and we get to add it all in. And the efficiency for us comes in understanding what it takes to make a difference, understanding what it takes to change this person's body, strength, hypertrophy, etc., understand what is required away from the gym in terms of nutrition, in terms of them dealing with their allostatic load stress, etc. And then understanding during an exercise, in the squat, barbell squat, I'm looking at my power rack here, you can't see it, your challenge is at the bottom. And as you reach the top, the challenge drops off because that's what happens to the resistance profile. You get stronger as you reach the top. So if you wanted the maximum challenge, you get to choose. Well, you choose that exercise and maybe you add things to the bar, or you do that exercise because you love it, and I love that exercise, and you do the leg extension and the leg curl as well.
What about people that have, I guess you'd call it funky movements, compensations in their squat? How do you fix that?
Depends on why. So those people that you're talking about is everyone.
Yeah, I said it to annoy you. I said the word fix to annoy you, but can you, so what I want to get at there is people walk in the gym, because I work in a commercial gym nowadays and I'm slumming it. And people walk in and they squat because they have to squat and squat. Not everybody, I'm guessing here, I don't think everyone should squat, or not everybody should squat if you open the dictionary next to the squat of the rules of what the squat say. And that back to that kind of choreography thing of like, well, the squat means that this should happen and your knee and hip should go to this degree. which would be something in like powerlifting where it becomes a sport, right? Where it's like judged on this external stuff, and people really aren't looking at, well, what was the goal anyway, and blah blah.
Make the answer easier for me. What's the goal?
Right, which is constantly the question that fixes every question, really. But if somebody wants to get in shape, whatever that means, they want to increase some hypertrophy, maybe in their little leggies, and they want to lose some body fat, and they want to pick up chicks and all the good stuff. But they want to squat, and now you've seen some kind of like shifty stuff. How would you go about finding out what happens there?
So there's got to be. I have a mental thing, but I used to actually have a notepad, and we collect notes on clients now on the iPad or on the laptop. So when we're assessing, when we're seeing stuff, even during a set, if someone's got this little weight shift thing, so their bum's kind of like shaking down as though they're like a rabbit as they're going down into the bottom of the squat, you just got to list out the potential options and then test them. You don't want to manually try to fix it to make it look pretty. I'm going to hold your hips in place, and I'm going to be kneeling, because you're not going to do this in a commercial gym anyway, when you're kneeling behind someone's ass and kind of holding it down as they're kind of squatting.
Yeah.
Because that shift might be their nervous system going, hey, you've got a little arthritis. Hey, you've got a little growth on your acetabulum that's going around the hip, and I'm just allowing you to avoid it because you don't want to rub into that, because now your labrum's gone.
Yeah.
Like there's structural reasons, and then there's muscular reasons, and then there's skill. So they may have learned, or their nervous system may have learned a compensation pattern based upon a prior injury. But the thing with stuff like that is,
right.
two things I would think about. One, let's not add extra load to that just yet until I'm really comfortable that person can control every single degree. Yeah. And I want to see that they can control every single degree by slowing down. So to answer your question, the question was, how would I deal with seeing these kind of like weird things that happen? I'm going to slow everything down. And I want to see, if I give that person a cue, does it change the outcome? If I have looked at their foot position, their knee position, their spinal position, does it change the outcome for the hips? If it doesn't, I'm actually taking them away from there onto the table, and I want to see what happens to the hips when I move through abduction, through flexion, through internal and external rotation.
So is orchestration prioritized by strength or skill?
I think the way to look at that is, what are the ingredients for orchestration? So the ingredients would be, you've got some joint mechanics and some muscle function. And that under muscle function, we could spend an hour looking at contraction and output from the muscle. That's kind of what the hip shows up with, for example. And then there's an intention. So there's a force that's applied, and there's an intention. I want to flex this hip. And then from there, there's a skill. There's a skill of the nervous system being able to respond to that external force, and then you get the outcome.
And I think one thing that you look at without thinking, without, like it's almost such an unconscious thing.
I don't think most of the time. So.
I know, but sometimes you do. Is that when you see these things, one thing that I'm seeing a lot, and obviously it's been around for so many years, is people call these things problems when actually they're solutions. And your nervous system has come up with the hips that shift side to side is a good thing. That's a solution to something that's going on. And people think of it, that's the problem, so we need to fix that. But I think you need to start thinking about, well, this is telling me that this is great information it's given me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you've got elbow pain. Awesome. Your nervous system's working. You've got tightness on this muscle. Awesome. Your nervous system's working. I know it's uncomfortable. I know you don't like it. I respect that we want to get to a point where you're not in pain, you don't have muscle tightness, etc., etc. I know you would like to look in the mirror and see your squat and it looks pretty, but dude, you're missing a meniscus. Or dude, you've got arthritis on this hip. I know you're only 29, but...
Yeah, you're unbiased about it.
Yeah.
Which is one of your biggest things, actually, is how And I don't know how you do it after so many years of like, you constantly remain unbiased. You don't have any like preconceived ideas of like what's going to happen, or if you see a pattern, there's no kind of pattern to you. You might, you've got some things you can pull up on. There's some anecdotal 73 years worth of personal training stuff that you think, I may have seen this before, but you never think, I know what it is because I've seen this before. And so how have you kind of remained, because I see it a lot with, and there is some, I'm sure there's some amazing therapists out there, but I see that a lot with like osteopaths, and they're kind of super like presumptuous of, yeah, this is why this has happened, this is why this has happened. And they talk about things like posture and flexibility, and it's kind of like these presumptions. But how do you remain so like unbiased? And again, back to you've got in your Instagram thing, the kind of conscious incompetence. What's kept you like that?
Because I have not done that all the time, and I messed up. I thought I could see patterns, and you see this matrix, and you're like, this has got to be this. And we are as humans, we try to pigeonhole things, and we try to bring things down to, this must be this because this is how it's always been. And the one thing that's always been riding through with me is that we got to measure it. And every time I think that I've got it, and it goes back to everything else, every time I think that I've got it and I measure it, and then I realize, oh no, I didn't. Oh no, I didn't get the results that I thought with this client. Oh no, I really fucked up.
Right.
And it's really, there is a body of work now. There's a body of work of what we've done, and it really, there's a framework, and this is effectively systems thinking, where there's a framework, but there's an ecosystem of all of these different systems which have their own function, that have a relationship with other systems within the body. And it's stepping back and just kind of like thinking about it like a mixing desk. How do we just dial this up? How do we dial this back? And being really comfortable with, not knowing. And
that's so it.
Knowing how to go, which is really tough because, like I said earlier, our clients want certainty. So we've got to be able to authentically be certain in terms of our approach, in terms of maybe, the years and years and years of experience. And at the same time, be really comfortable with the fact that you've got a new person in front of you. This person, and, we have people that I consult with that are physique athletes, bodybuilders, and they want to reach a point where they step on stage, or they're already on stage right now. And so my role with those individuals is, how can I minimize degradation for this joint? How can I maximize tissue development through exercise design and exercise execution? Because they're the two of the main things within exercise mechanics. If I default it to I know, in terms of I know the way, then I'm doing them a disservice.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm really conscious of time, but there's one more thing I want to talk to you about. Have you got 5 minutes, right? Have you? How long have we been going? About an hour.
I go as long as you need.
All right, you've got an empty gym. There's nobody there. It's fine. Can we just talk for 2 minutes about stretching? And I know we've touched on it. I don't know if people caught on that you touched on it, but we did briefly. There is a huge bias, and I thought I'd got away from it, but since being back in the commercial gyms, I'm back into the last 10 minutes of the, sorry, when I say back into, I'm surrounded by, I'm not into, the last 10 minutes of the session is stretching out your client. And that's the thing. And my stance on it is this. Somebody called me anti-stretching, and I said, I'm not anti-stretching, I'm anti-assumption that stretching might be good, it may be good, it may be bad. Where do you, and I'm asking you because you opened my eyes on this, of just being like, I came to you once, and this is when we done sort of RTS stuff, and then I thought, well, can we go through some training things? And you said, cool. And before we'd done anything, I was like, just let you know, I've got really tight hamstrings, tight hip flexors. I must work on a desk or drive a manual car, which is something I got told before when I'm a personal trainer that takes the tube. And you said, how do you know that? And I was like, because I have. Like, there was no argument. And anyway, then you kind of went down this whole rabbit hole about stretching, and then we kind of explored the whole maybe taking the seatbelt off thing, and maybe it's a good idea, but a lot of time it's not a good idea, and there's a lot more to it. Where are you? That was 6 or 7 years ago. Where are you at now? I get told all the time that I'm lazy because I don't stretch my clients.
Who tells you that?
Another trainer said it to me the other day. He said, "Oh, you just can't be bothered." I said, "No, I'm just not sure it's a good idea." He said, "Of course, the stretching is a good idea, because flexibility or mobility, as it should probably be called, is put on a real pedestal. There's a guy today." I'm not joking. He was wearing jeans, doing the full-on splits. I wanted to ask where he got his jeans from. They looked amazing. The full-on splits in the middle of the gym floor. It's just bizarre, but I was laughing because it was such like I can do the splits. And everybody look, and I was looking and I was impressed mainly because of the jeans. But why is it, do you think, that it's better if you can move your joints more? Or is it, I guess the question is it better the more mobile you are? And you're going to say, what do you mean by better? But that's the question.
So if we reframed, is it better to move your joints more, to is it preferential to control?
Why is everybody obsessed with stretching, and where do you stand on it? That's a better question.
There's a bunch of reasons why people stretch that I've heard personally. Mm-hmm. I want to improve my mobility. It's what you do. I was told. Like there's these things that people say. It does X, Y, and Z, meaning it lengthens muscles. It doesn't lengthen. Your muscles can't lengthen because they've got attachment points. But what you're saying is that they're acting on, we can kind of like try to kind of dig down. I got to keep coming back to questions. And, if someone comes in and goes, I've been told to stretch because I have, and I did a consultation for a new personal training client. They said his pelvis is like this, and his hip flexors and his hamstrings are tight. And I said, how did they assess that? Mm-hmm. And they looked at him, and it's like, so they didn't actually move you or ask you to move. It's just based upon this how it looks.
Yeah.
So there's an assumption. There's just assumptions. Yeah. So I have a client that, came to me and said, I need to stretch because if I don't, I'm in pain. And through a series of questions, it was like, what's causing the pain? What is stretching doing that decreases pain? Okay, so if we remove the stretching, why would pain be present? Pain's not a mistake. Your nervous system's not waking up and going, I'm going to fuck with you today, Lucas. Mm-hmm. It's doing that for a reason. And you might be able to create an analgesic effect by stretching or using the foam roller, but that doesn't mean that it's healthy for you. Just in the same way that I can drink a bottle of tequila, that doesn't mean it's healthy for me. Mm-hmm. We might enjoy it. You might enjoy the foam roller, I might enjoy the tequila, and we both do. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that it's healthy. So it's a case of kind of really nailing what are you trying to do? What's the goal that you're trying to do? Now, there may be a reason why stretching is really, why the people that you're seeing in your gym, people love the stretching because it's 10 minutes less work.
Yeah.
Now that might be really unfair because actually most of the people who are paying for a personal trainer want to work. So let's kind of like move that to the side.
No, but for the trainers, that's a reason.
Maybe.
They've told me.
But for the client, it might be a time where in their day that is manic, they get to sit still for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And that sitting still for 10 minutes actually does wonderful things to your nervous system. Mm-hmm. Now, could we get that benefit by doing something else which may or may not have a detrimental effect on your muscles and like your joints? Still. Yeah. What?
Like just sitting still?
Like sitting still. replacing it with, I don't know, meditation, just laying on the mats.
Well, that's like the whole yoga thing, that the same argument with that is people say, I've kind of, it's not that I'm not, again, I'm not anti anything, but I've had these kind of back and forth of the yoga thing and, or any of those kind of, you know, stretchy things. And they said, but I just feel so great. And I'm like, well, then that's all that matters. But could you feel so great without maybe doing some bad stuff too?
And I'm super intrigued because that's their experience, and we don't want to remove that experience because that's really valid. Just like I'm on Brick Lane, the woman that's out there right now and she's shooting heroin because this is Brick Lane and that's what's happening. She's saying the same thing.
Yeah, you've got her in a minute.
She's saying the same thing.
She's in at 5.
She's coming in soon. That's a pre-workout.
Yeah.
So, but her experience, we can't place a judgment on her experience, just like we can't with the person that you've spoken to. The question I want to know is why does that give you that benefit? Why is it about that benefit? Is there any risk? Well, I'm not going to give you my opinion because my opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is measure. So I did a master's in biomechanics, but one of the studies I did, handheld dynamometer, rigged it up, and I looked at the effect of static stretching. And one of the things I found out of the 40 people, 40, one person increased their strength following the stretch. 39 decreased their strength following the stretch. Does that mean that someone's listening to this? I'm not saying that stretching will decrease your strength because I'm not measuring you. I'm measuring these people. And I measure every single person that comes in here. And that's why this is personal training. Because I'm not going to assume that a stretch is going to be detrimental to you. So when you came in, we looked at this and it was like, okay, you've got this tight hamstring. How do you know you've got this tight hamstring? Well, because I feel this tension. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you're tight. That doesn't mean you're restricted. Let's measure it. And we measured your hip range and you could get your leg all the way back here, like they were at the side of your head. So it's like, dude, you've got the hip range of a ballerina. So it's not that you're tight. You're feeling tension. Why are you feeling tension? And then we could kind of actually be really specific with what we're looking at. So the stretching thing is really, I'm kind of still in the same realm that it's an intervention. It's got potential desired outcomes. That doesn't mean that that's going to ever happen for anyone. Just like if I was to say to you, what would be the best exercise for legs? And you had your cap on from elsewhere, you'd say the squat. And if I said, what's the best exercise for your quads? You'd say the squat. And I'd be like, yeah, but there's no quad development for you in the squat. We got to get precise.
Yeah. And your, it's, I don't know if it's on your website, or I don't know where I've seen it. Maybe you've said it is client defined training, which is very much what your business is about, which we spoke about before we started recording, is the difference between one-to-one training and personal training. And it's exactly that. And I think the biggest thing I've taken from meeting you is keeping it that, and just constantly reminding yourself that if you're going to call it personal training, it better be very, very personal to this person on this day, in this moment. Because even when you start to think you get to know someone, they'll come in and they've had a really bad day and suddenly their rib cage is a bit dropped and they're not really into it, and suddenly they're not as strong as they were, or they're thinking about something else. And it's it can might as well be a different person. So it's like, it's so forever changing, which is fun, hopefully.
It's super fun.
I mean,
one of the foundations courses that I do, so the first day we're looking at squats, and I literally ask people, we've got 25 people in the class, everyone's doing a squat, and I'm asking everyone to make notes. What are you seeing? And people really struggle. And these are people who are really kind of high up in their career. They've done a lot of courses, and it's like, just literally, don't judge it. Don't say it's right or wrong. Just what are you seeing? The knees going in, the ankles rolling out. What's going on with the pelvis? And the practice of seeing, because it's really, we've all had an education journey. My education journey started, when I was working in a gym. I was unqualified and I was reading magazines and looking at people in the gym. The progression from that is going on courses, but you don't forget this stuff, right? You bring it with you because that experience is really key. You're always looking at people in the gym. And then you're looking at textbooks And then you're looking at research, you're looking at evidence. The progression on from this kind of idea of evidence-based training, because that's really valid, is client-defined. And you include all of that stuff as you reach client-defined. Meaning, we look at a research paper, and this research paper says, you should have your hands 1.7 times acromion thickness to stimulate the clavicular division. That's what the research says. No. We take that, shows us a compass. Now look at your client. If you're like me, you've got these tiny little humerus. For you, your humerus is as big as my whole arm, which means that we should not be following the evidence. I should be bringing that and actually applying it to you. And that's the client defines. And that makes it more interesting, because if we're just following a protocol, then we'd be done by now.
So boring. I totally get that. Listen, we need to wrap this up because I've been talking to you for nearly 2 hours. The reason I wanted to do this podcast with you, first of all, because there was no bigger point in my career where a light bulb moment where it really kind of accelerated. Sounds so awful to say my knowledge, but because I still feel like I have so little of it, but I guess that is what it is. It kind of like really showed me how much further and things are left to explore, and it was so huge. So I've always been a huge admirer of it. The way you think and picking your brain is awesome. I wanted to get you on because I wanted to introduce people to yourself and exercise mechanics, RTS stuff, all these great things that I've learned from you. So thank you so much for coming on. How do people, and you're super not social media, and I get that, but you do amazing educational courses for personal trainers. Where would they find that, and how do they find that?
If you go to Michael.Goulden on Instagram, then you'll have links to Integra Education and Integra Personal Training, and then the websites are there. Awesome. I just want to talk to when you ever since you first came into the classroom, you've inspired me and created so many questions and challenges and answers that inspires me to want to keep doing it again and want to go look into more. So that feeling is very much mutual in terms of the progression and the continual development and just a representation of being an exercise professional.
Well, that's super kind of you.
Pretty awesome.
Well, we've got a long way to go, but as long as you can make it another 100 years, 700. How old are you?
40.
You're not 40. I'm not having it. You're 21. All right. Anyway, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Goulden.